10 Hut. Hey, Ron, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Rob? How's everything going today? Sunny
Good.
Florida.
A little hot there up there in New York, huh? What are you guys doing? You flip the country upside down, I think.
I tell you, it has been a scorcher this week. It's been over 100 degrees, the real feel. It's thank God my AC is working. That's
Yeah,
all I can
right.
say.
My
You
God.
know, kids went down
Yeah.
to the beach for a little bit. Even the little ones didn't want to stay out in it. It was that bad. You know.
How's the sand? Is the sand hot out there?
The sand, well, anything that's going to get hot in 100-degree weather, the sun beating down on it, but it's not horrible. You wear your water shoes or whatever the case may be.
I tell you, there's one beach in Florida, Siesta Key. The sand doesn't get hot. I don't know why. I don't know how. My daughter showed me. She's like, "Come on, go to this beach. You can walk right out on the beach, and your feet don't burn or anything. It's just amazing, no matter how hot it is." But
Like
yeah,
a
no,
white
it's crazy.
sand beach. It's like a
Yeah.
white sand beach.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah. Besides the heat, it was hot last night.
Oh yeah.
We had the Democratic primary yesterday. Last night, John McCary, who hosts the Finest Unfiltered podcast, 0805, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, hosted an X Space during the primaries while the polls were closing. The whole Finest Unfiltered family was on, plus a lot of our good listeners. I see Lily in the chat. She was on last night in there. And the outcome was that Mamdani won the primary. Now, with ranked choice voting, he needs 50% of the vote in order to actually technically win the primary. Andrew Cuomo did concede to him. So that's going to put his votes over the top. And technically, they still have to go into the round to adjust the votes for people's second votes to go to Mamdani. But Mamdani, is the Democratic candidate for mayor for New York City. What says you about that?
Well, I tell you, we got a little fight ahead of us, right? So like John predicted this, right? John McCarty all along had called this. He said he had a really good grassroots base, was out there every day, campaigning. Like, he kids around, says Cuomo was driving around in a Dodge Charger and he wasn't really campaigning. But yeah, it's amazing. Now we got to talk about his Department of Community Safety, right? That whole craziness that he talks about, whether or not he's going to, is he going to actually, some of these questions here were asked in the reporting to New Yorkers in the city. It says, which statement best reflects your preferred approach to policing? Now, this was asked of Mamdani, and he says, all major categories of crime are far above pre-pandemic levels, especially felony assaults, while the number of NYPD officers has declined below the department's budget headcount. The current mayor has intensified criminal enforcement of quality of lives. So Mamdani's answer to that is he's going to maintain roughly the current size of the police force and focus enforcement on serious crimes. So I thought that's what we kind of do now. Don't we kind of enforce serious crimes? I think we kind of, But I mean, I know he's fighting quality of life, but all right. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean?
Well, does that mean that he's going to try and, like some of the district attorneys, almost act out of his, position? He's not a legislator as the mayor.
No.
But it sounds like he's going to want the NYPD not to really enforce low-level crimes.
Right.
By that statement. But, a lot of people in the race, right, were all defund the police when it was the hot topic back in 2020. So let's take a look at Mamdani X post back in 2020. Look at this. We don't need an investigation to know that the NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. What we need to do is defund the police. And now that mindset is coming to a theater near you for the November mayoral race with the leading party, the Democratic Party in New York City, and this is the candidate that the people of New York voted for the most. So now,
It's crazy. You know, it's crazy. Is it? You know,
well, these are
we
the odds to win, right? These are the odds to win the mayoral election at this point. And it has Mamdani at 72%, right? Curtis Sliwa down there at 2%, the Republican candidate, right? Eric Adams at 21% and Andrew Cuomo at 5%. So, you know, that's in a four-way race, and that's not including anybody else. So what do we have to look forward to with this? I mean, I see, like you said, there's a hard, long road ahead of New Yorkers now. And I think the problem with the Democratic base was that no other Democratic candidate, right? First of all, did we ever hear a Q&A other than the couple of debates from Andrew Cuomo?
you didn't hear anything from them,
You
right?
didn't hear anything. All you heard from any of these other candidates was, "Don't vote for Mamdani." That's all. That was their platform that they put out. Whereas Mamdani actually, whether we agree or disagree, had a good grassroots campaign, took in a lot of donations, a lot of low-level donations, and was out there. He was boots on the ground. He was speaking. You saw him everywhere. He was all over social media. And like it or not, this is what we have right now. So, yeah, that was the Q&A, and you started talking about his Department of, community safety and the plan that he put forward, where, right, he's going to realign the public safety aspect of New York City, right? This is where he talks about his transit plan and everything else. You want to touch on this one?
Yeah, I was gonna jump back to the other one because
Okay.
we talked about quality of life a little bit in the beginning, how he wasn't going to enforce low crimes, right? And I see that the MTA loses about $6 million a year to fare evasion, and his answer to that question was, "We're not going to enforce it." So even though he's not in charge of the transit system, right? The MTA run by the governor, he's not going to enforce it. So it's like he did said with the buses, it's going to be a free, right? Buses are free, run by the MTA. Now the subways are free, run by the MTA. So I mean, is the state losing money too? I mean, this is his policies right now are affecting the whole state.
But also, let me ask you this: he doesn't have that authority.
No,
He doesn't have the authority to give free bus rides
no,
to New York City residents. If he wants to take money out of his budget and give out Metro cards for a free
Yeah.
ride, that's something that he could do put into the budget and get his budget passed by the city council to do. But
right.
the MTA is a state agency that runs transit.
Yeah, no. So what is he doing? Okay, so you're not gonna let PD do enforcement, right? So that's what's gonna happen. That's the only way they're still gonna be committing a violation of jumping over the turnstile or whatever. It's an administrative code or an oath, right? They're gonna jump over the turnstile, but they're not gonna enforce it then. So I mean, it's similar to what he talks about with the sanctuary city laws, right? His answer to the sanctuary city laws was he's gonna change the law, and the city authorities should further restrict cooperation with federal authorities. So, I mean, it seems like most of the things that he's doing, he's just leading into disaster, and compounding the problems that already exist. So, if
So,
I'll jump into the Department of, community safety now that they talk about our response to emotionally disturbed people, right? And I think didn't you have something about where he talked about some sort of escalation that if the police respond.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's a video. It's an interview he did, and they asked him what his plans are for the police to really only go into the higher crime areas to do it. Let's take a look at number 3, Jack.
Are you, do you think that we have to almost do without policing in certain areas which are labeled to be high crimes to have alternative bodies? Do the policing in a more compassionate, more merciful, more social, assisting and helping more than arresting and putting in jail?
I absolutely think that what we need to do is give support and funding to institutions that are trained to deal with these kinds of issues. As you said, if you're having an argument with someone and there's a risk of it escalating, who is better positioned to de-escalate it? Someone who is well known in the community, or someone who has been trained specifically in de-escalation, or a stranger who has a gun? And we see so many situations where encounters with police, the police arrive and all of a sudden the tension rises even astronomically to what it was prior.
Right.
And I think that we need to say and ask ourselves, look at how policing is done in the suburbs, in wealthier, whiter America. When people make mistakes, the answer is not to throw them in jail.
No.
The answer is not to, put them in a cage and throw away the key. The answer is to try and find a non-carceral solution.
Absolutely.
Community service, something where they learn from their mistakes. There's a sense of accountability and growth. All these kinds of things, which for many people in this country, especially Black people, are not offered the same opportunity.
Okay.
I don't even understand what he's trying to say, to be perfectly honest with you. If there's a chance of the situation escalating, send in social workers instead of strangers. The police are strangers who are going to escalate it more. So if there's a possibility of danger, if there's a possibility of it escalating to violence, he wants to send in these social workers. And I don't understand his point of that they'll know these people from the community. I'm not 100% sure what that means. Where are these people coming from? Are you going to have people sign up in the neighborhood? Hey, I'm going to go up and respond, and I'm going to get trained in de-escalation. It is, the police we all have gone through de-escalation training and had to learn about that in many different ways, but it doesn't work. And then what's going to happen when it does escalate and these people are now, these social workers are now in harm's way?
Hey, listen, I'm telling you, I think Samara Cohen's absolutely dead on. They did try this already. I remember them doing a pilot program specifically in Staten Island. I've spoken about it before on this podcast. They wanted social workers to respond to an EDP call, or emotionally disturbed person call, and not have the police. But what they wanted us to do, specifically for the emergency service unit, is stay a block away in case something went bad. And I can't tell you what the guys in ESU thought. They're like, this is insanity. Like, we're not going into a EDP case anymore, emotionally disturbed person. You know what we're going into? A barricaded EDP with a hostage. Because what do you think they're going to do with the social workers? They're going to let them out? Oh no, we don't need you. Leave. And you're right. I looked at Mamdani's plan, and it was going to be hire more social workers. So how are they going to know them from the neighborhood? Are they going to hire them specifically in each part of the neighborhood, and then they respond from the house? Like, yesterday it was, hey Joe, how are you doing in the grocery store? And now, hey, knock, knock, knock. I'm here to make sure you're mentally stable. And keep in mind, right now, New York City has where you can call 988, which is like a suicide crisis hotline. It's open 24 hours, and they have mobile crisis teams already. So I don't see where he's, this is all not new, but he's selling it as new, and that's what that's how good of a politician is. He's put this platform none of it might not be new, but he put it out there, and it's enticed a young group of people, right? The 25s to 45s, with the free things, holding back the rent, right? No rent increases. Imagine owning a building and the cost of fuel goes up, the cost of electricity goes up, but you can't raise the rent at all. Not even like a cap, where you used to cap it at the 2% or whatever, but now nothing. So now you're just going to sit there for 4 years and not raise the rent. I mean, yeah, if I was a tenant, I'm all for it. I'm voting for you, right? And that's what people are voting for. They're voting for the pocketbook, and they're not thinking about the repercussions. Like, we all know, you can do all these cuts. Somebody has to pay for it. Nothing's free in this life. I haven't seen anything really that's free, right? How many times you get an ad for, hey, join this and you this and this, and then later on, all of a sudden your credit card gets hit with a bill, and you're like, what is this? Oh, well, you got this for this many days, but now we're at the 60th day, so nothing's free. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to get more people hurt. And like you said, it's going to turn into barricaded jobs. And listen, there's a reason why people in the police department can't work in the precinct that they live in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for that reason, like you said. I don't need to be, seeing you at Stop and Shop and then seeing you on a job,
right.
in a domestic incident. It just causes a lot of friction, but it doesn't make sense, but this is what's been voted for.
Yeah, I know. I mean, hopefully, I know John talks about it all the time, the Republican base, and who they put up. I mean, in my opinion, too. The 25 to 45-year age, you need somebody from the Republican side that can touch and talk to those people as well, like he did. He came and he was able to get them and speak to them and give them, things that he thought that they would want. So I think that the Republican Party, they just keep putting the same person. I mean, I love Curtis, and I think he would do a great job. He's, pro law enforcement. His whole life's been, stopping crime. Whether or not we felt it was right at the time or not. I mean, I thought it was a little crazy that, guys unarmed and stuff on the trains, but he did it, and he was successful. So, but is it a little too late? I don't know. I don't know for this one. It's very scary. So.
Yeah, and let's not take Jim Walden off the table.
No, I mean, that's one of the.
So
I agree.
Cuomo's lead person in his campaign said that he's going to be running still on the independent line. So now you have the independent line split with Cuomo, with the current mayor, the incumbent, who didn't run on the Democratic ticket. He left the Democratic Party, and even though he went and voted, but so he must still be a registered Democrat.
Right.
And you have Jim, who's going to be also on the independent line. So with a 5-person ticket, you're splitting the vote a lot. So there's different possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
And if Cuomo drops out, which I don't know that he will.
I don't think he will, but
I don't think so either. But if he does, that's a game changer. And now I think I agree with John, where if Cuomo drops out, you're going to have a lot of the Cuomo base voting for Adams. So we'll see. It's a long time until November. There's a lot going on. Like Jim Walden did say when he came on the podcast for his segment, to talk about his platform, his public safety platform. The primary's over. Now the race begins.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said he was getting into it now.
So now let's see what happens, and that's about
Ron, you're familiar. Last night you spoke about. I know Samara Cohen's has a quick question about the rank-based voting. Right. How does it even work? I know you spoke about it on the X Space last night, right? A little bit. You want to maybe answer that for her, or?
Well, I had to look it up because once I heard that Cuomo conceded, I said, what does that even mean? Because it's ranked choice voting. So ranked choice voting goes into effect if one of the candidates doesn't get 50% of the vote. And as you can see, I believe it was what Jack put out, 46% is what he got. So then it goes into the next round. And, if your candidate didn't win, then it goes into who you chose for number two, and so on and so forth until someone gets over that 50%. But now, what I read real quick last night was when Cuomo dropped out, all his number one votes get wiped out, and the people that voted for him, it now goes to their number two to count. Like, people don't recast their vote.
No, right.
You rank choice them. That's why they were saying don't rank Mamdani, don't rank Cuomo, because this way, they don't have a secondary chance to catch up. So with Cuomo's votes being pulled off, then you have whoever voted for Cuomo when their rankings come in. Now wherever they rank Mamdani, is going to come into play, and that's that. Let's see what we got. There's something in here.
Yeah, the way I understood it was similar. It was that you have five choices because five people were running. So you pick your first choice. Let's say I pick Cuomo, and then I pick a second choice, Mamdani, and then I could pick the third, fourth, and fifth choice. And it's almost like if somebody didn't get 50%, they would have a new election or a new vote, but you already voted five times. So it just continually keep going down the line until somebody got 51%. Right.
Yeah.
So I think I don't necessarily agree with it. I think the person who made them, I mean, he would have won anyway because he had the most
Right.
votes yesterday. But
I think that's the way it should be.
If in fact if Cuomo and Mamdani had both 35% yesterday, there normally would have been a runoff in another place, but there's no runoff because now it goes who voted for him, how many people voted for him for the number two position, and then if that's not a tie, then they go to the number three position. If somebody gets 50%, I don't necessarily agree with it because I think I think you like to have choices. If they have to have five elections, so be it. But they don't. It was passed, I think, in 2019 or whatever. So it's on the books in New York City. So I don't like
I
it.
see brother Eric Dim in the chat today. Welcome from the wilderness of British Columbia. He's on his way with his RV on a trip after the loss of his son Derek to go out and explore a little bit. On his way up to Alaska with his family in his RV. He showed some pictures, some good stuff. So we wish you safe travels, Eric. You got anything else on this?
No, I think
I'll go backwards for 1 second.
Yeah.
To the beginning. Just to let everybody know, we put it out. I put it out in an X post, and we've been talking about it. We're going to have a new segment called Ask an Executive. So I see a lot of pictures. A lot of questions have been popping up in the chat. We're going to save them if we can. If they're relevant to what we're exactly talking about right now, we always try to answer the questions. We try to be engaged, but sometimes we miss the question. We get a little distracted. We're in our conversation, going back and forth, giving our perspective on whatever the topic is. We try, and I think we have a lot of engagement with our chat in relative to our conversations, and that's what I think. When Rob approached, making up this segment and having this, Q&A session with our audience, it's a great idea. But they don't have to be on topic questions. They could be off topic questions. If you have a question while we're talking, it's fine to ask, and if we can get to it, and include it into our conversation, that's wonderful. That makes the show, that's part of what's good about the flow of the show, doing the live show. And so that's great. We'll try, and if we see some questions, we'll try, maybe you see us writing, leaning down and jotting down some questions if we see something. But we're going to do the Q&A at the end, and in the future, for future episodes, because we're going to make this a regular segment on the show. So we're always going to take live questions, but you can email at thefinestunfiltered.com. Okay, there's the website, www.thefinestunfiltered.com. And then there's a contact. You scroll down and there's a contact us link. And you can put your questions in there. The website is being redone by John and Marlon. And so we may have different options in the near future. But for right now, just visit us at www.thefinestunfiltered.com and contact us. Email page will pop up. We guarantee your privacy, and we will not, quote unquote, expose you in your question. If you want to be identified, put that in the email that you don't mind being identified. We'll identify who the question is coming from, where the question is coming from. Can't, again, guarantee that we are going to speak and answer on every question, but we'll try to get to them. We want you to be respectful in your questions. And again, they don't have to be on the topic that we're discussing for that week. They could be about any questions that you've ever wanted to ask an executive. And we're going to get into a little bit later, about how certain people in the NYPD feel about their bosses and their ability and approachability, to ask questions and have those open dialogues. But here on the Finest Unfiltered, on the executive perspective, that's what we're here for. We're here to give our perspective from our years, 65 years combined of experience, or over 40 years combined as executives. And so again, listen, we may not have the most up-to-date patrol guide procedure on very little minute specific things, but we're going to give you our general opinions. Like, we're going to get into a topic in a minute about an off-duty incident, and we're going to give our perspective of that incident that's been discussed on other shows in the podcast. There's another thing. We know that a lot of people don't engage in the chat, that they listen, they watch the show. We appreciate the viewership. We love the engagement. And a lot of people don't engage because they're active members of the service, and they might be afraid of retribution from the job because they said something or asked a question or maybe criticized the job, which we can do openly as retired members of the service. But you see in the chat, you see some people's pictures. Sometimes you don't see any picture. Sometimes you see, a GIF or whatever the case may be next to the person's name, like, Bones 1999 has, a picture of somebody, doing a tie, and things like that. So at the end, but just before we do the new segment, Ask an Executive, I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how in YouTube you can go into the settings and you could change your picture to put a different picture up there, or take your picture down completely. You could change your name so it doesn't come up as Stephen S. or Lily. It can come up as Bones 1999, which who's going to be able to identify who Bones 1999 is? And also how to change your handle, because those things are, anybody on YouTube could see those things, but it won't exactly tell you who you are. So I'm going to go through a quick tutorial on how to change those things in a little while. So if you want to get a pen and pencil ready, it's only a couple of quick steps. And I'll go through a slideshow and we'll do that. But so if you could save the off-topic questions till the end, if you're prepared to ask a question, that's fine. If we see some questions, then we'll try and jot them down and maybe get back to them in a little while.
I think Ozan Agulu ask a quick question relative to what we were just talking about, because we were talking about the mayor race, right? He says, "Hey, Chief, I got a question. Every time that there is a mayoral race, all these mayors promise new cops. Can you explain how we can get more cops?" So really, that's up to the mayor. Unfortunately, that's up to him. The police department can put um, their vacancies out to the mayor and say, "Hey, we're looking to hire this many." And the mayor is going to give the final approval. And I think also doesn't the city council have something to do with that? Ron, you dealt with a little bit of that because you were in candidate assessment, right? So how did you know how many people were in a particular class, that you were putting together?
Okay. Yeah, it's the Office of Management and Budget from the mayor's office. So we had monthly meetings at the chief personnel's office with representatives from the Personnel Bureau, from the First Deputy Commissioner's office, from the Police Academy, the Deputy Commissioner of Training's office, and also from the Office of Management and Budget, from the mayor's office. So there is a budget. There's a budget for how many people we can hire, how many people we can hire at certain titles. It gets a little tricky where you can actually give up a certain amount of one title to hire a certain amount of other titles, depending on the pay scale. So it gets a little convoluted, but it's all about the budget and approval from City Hall. And when we want to put a class in, we have to get approval or whatever number we're requesting.
That's crazy. I mean, it's understandable, right? The mayor's ultimately in charge of the budget in the city, and everybody works at the approval of the mayor, so you kind of have to. But yeah, that's what we got with that one. So
yeah, so we'll try and answer questions at the end, and get to your questions. So if you can save your questions, that'd be great. If you do throw them out, like I said, we'll try and catch up to them. So anything else on the new segment, Rob?
No. I think like you said, if they want to send it anonymously, you can send it to the finestunfiltered.com. And then we'll get that and we'll try to put it on the next segment, after we get it. But you should really tell your friends and family members that have questions, come, get on the podcast, like and follow, and we'll try to answer them live. If we get a lot, we're gonna have to filter a few, but we'll try to get as many as we can, as long as they're within the contents and things that we can answer. Some things I can't answer how to get the little bit of toothpaste out of your toothpaste thing when it's at the end. Like somebody said, just go buy a new tube of toothpaste, all right?
Toothpaste, right. And we won't be able to answer, other jurisdictions' policies, just general police policies, and we're very knowledgeable when it comes to the NYPD. So, as we said at the opening, in the Finest Unfiltered family, right now we have 3 shows on the network. Right, we have the original Finest Unfiltered, retired and unfiltered podcast, 0805 with John McCary and Eric Dim. And then the Sal Greco show is on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1:05 p.m. And then we joined the network with the Executive Perspective. We do obviously Wednesdays at 5:05 p.m. And we're all different. We all have different perspectives. Rob and I have different perspectives. If we thought the same, the show would be boring. If we agreed on every single thing. We have a lot of offline conversations between Rob and I, between Eric, John, myself, Marlon, Sal, our producer in the background, everybody that is in the job. Jack is his name. I'm sorry. Jack is our producer. I didn't mean to leave your name out and just call you the producer. But we have conversations in the background, and we discuss different topics and different things that come up on each other's shows and give our varying opinions. And, we don't always agree with what each other says, and that's fine. You know, as Eric says, opposition meets opportunity, right? We have an opportunity to discuss things and put out different things. So on yesterday's show, Sal put out a video of an off-duty incident. We're going to put that up in a minute, not yet. And it was of an officer who got involved in an off-duty incident from an altercation that was in the vestibule of a transit station we believe to be in the Bronx, because it's really not been confirmed, and I haven't seen anything in any of the papers, and I don't think anybody else has either, other than this traction that it's gotten from Sal posting it on his show. And Sal had a very strong opinion that the officer, you know, may have done some things wrong, and we're going to get into a couple of different things and where my perspective, Rob's going to give his perspective on the incident, and from our experience, what we think the officer did right, did wrong, and what he was justified in. But what we're going to show you is where the justification comes from that gave him this justification to take the action that he took. So let's take a look at the
Ron, also, I think they're going to get our perspective as you know, captain, deputy inspector, inspector, duty chief, when you get this call, right? So you might be sitting in your office and you get this call, hey, I'm the duty captain and I have this off-duty incident. So I think our perspective will be a little bit different than how Sal sees it, maybe how John and Eric and Marlon saw it, which with a little bit more of, you know, because we have the authority to maybe change duty status and things like that. So, you know, our view is a little different. So I just wanted to throw that out there, you know, just how we think we're going to throw it out, you know, to how everybody can see it.
Yeah, and we're also, you know, just because I think we prepare a little differently, because we have had, you know, through our executive careers have, you know, had to prepare for meetings and everything else. And, you know, listen, I've always said this, a podcast is not a newscast, right? We're speaking about our perspectives, but at times we do speak fact and bring up specific facts and relate it to whether it's an article that we're relating to, or it's an actual perspective or an actual policy, procedure, or law. And we're going to show you some of all of those that are related to this incident. And then, like Rob said, we're the ones that used to have to respond to these things. We've responded to hundreds, if not thousands, over our executive careers of off-duty instances of all different types. You know, I was a captain, deputy inspector, and inspector in Queens North. We handled all of the Long Island off-duty instances. So, you know, I've handled a ton. And I'm also going to give you, I'm going to tell you a war story of an incident that I was involved with when I was a cop. But let's throw the video up.
Nah, they trying to get active. Dropped him. Dropped him. What about that? Oh, shit. Hey, yo, Tim. Hey, yo, put that shit down before you clap him, gang. Oh, dumbass. I know what I'm doing. Hey, yo, why you up in that? Nigga, what the fuck is you doing? Hey, yo, chill out. Hey, yo, chill out. Move with you reckless with that. Move with you reckless with that.
Drop it. Yo, put that back.
Are you wildin'?
Put it down. Everybody back up.
I'm trying to explain this to you. Excuse me, I'm trying to explain this to you.
Hey, yo.
Yeah, it's a crazy ending. It's a crazy ending to a very hectic scene. So let's bring it up, mute it, and pause it in the beginning, Jack, so we can dissect this a little bit more. So you want to go? You want me to go, Rob?
I mean, I can go. What I see is that he, you know, he's on the on the side, the street side, I would call it, before he jumps over the turnstile and gets into the system. And he sees something, right? So he sees something that raises his suspicion, almost probable cause, in my opinion. You know, you see what I think he believes to see. And again, I'll preface this with, we don't know exactly, right? Because we really haven't heard anything about it. But what you hear in the background, is believed to be a knife. So he jumps over the turnstile and he goes and he starts to retrieve his weapon, which right off the bat, I'll tell you that I feel that there's no problem with that at all, because all he has right there is his phone, his shield, and his weapon. And if this individual has a knife, then there's absolutely, he's already made the decision that he's going to take action. Okay, so that's the first decision, and you have a couple decisions to make before you even while you're making that decision. Actually, you have a couple ideas in your head. One, you could maybe call 911 first, but is there an imminent threat? Is the guy about to get stabbed? And you might not have time to call 911. Could you could you turn around and just walk away? You could, but you know, that's your moral obligation to the city of New York and the people, is to protect life and property. So I don't necessarily know that. Could you have just stepped back and called 911 and observed? Yeah, you could have. But if you did, would that individual have then been stabbed? So what I see is he decides, he feels this is an imminent threat, that this individual is going to stab this other individual, and he jumps over. And what I see there is what I believe is really good is that he takes his shield out. He identifies himself. I would have liked to heard more commands, you know, more calling the police outward. I don't know, I don't necessarily hear that in the video, but I think that what he does there, everything that he's done there so far, I really have no problem at all with.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree that he saw what type of, we don't know. We don't know what precipitated everybody going into the station. Now, did he witness the beginning of an altercation outside the station and it spilled into the station, into the vestibule of the station there? That's what it looked like to me, because he followed that crowd in by jumping over the turnstile. So to me, he was already raised up that something's going on that could potentially be dangerous, because he feels the need that he's going to get involved. Then as he steps closer, when he gets originally past that first pillar, he must, again, it's all presumption on our part. What appears to me, looks like at that point, he sees the alleged knife and an imminent threat. So remember, the police have the right to use deadly physical force when deadly physical force is being used or about to be used against himself or someone else in the public. So yeah, taking out your firearm, and what do we always say? Don't take it out if you don't intend to use it, right? So he's taking out his firearm because he observed, right, to his perspective, that there's an imminent threat. He draws down on the subject in the brown shirt who's got a knife in his right hand. He takes a tactical position, because I'm not 100% on all of his tactics, and we'll get into that. But I think in the beginning here, he uses some good tactics. He takes position behind the pole in the garbage can for a point of cover. He's moving himself around to try and keep a line of sight on the subject.
And just to interject real quick, in this particular scene, when the individual walks by him, he steps back. He does almost like a tactical retreat to keep distance between himself and that perpetrator.
Agreed. Now, This is where our perspective differs from Sal's. Sal's view on yesterday's show was that he shouldn't have pulled out his weapon. He should have called 911 because he was outnumbered. There's one perpetrator with a knife. You don't know who's with him. Correct. I agree with Sal there. You don't know if that crowd is going to turn on you. You're right. And you can't say, oh, I can't get involved because I'm outnumbered. Because how often are the police outnumbered? Okay, that's why he has a firearm, is because he needs to protect life and property. And he has that right to protect life and property, and the ultimate right to take a life if necessary as a last resort. Now, Sal's point was it's a last resort to take your gun out. That's not necessarily true. You take out that knife to confront you take out your weapon to confront the threat. The threat is the man with the knife, who was not threatening him at the time, was threatening someone else. So to this point, I don't see that the officer did anything wrong. Now, this is a dynamic situation. There's a lot of people. Once people see the gun, and they did see his shield, because you'll hear people say, officer, officer, calling out to him, because they don't want the officer to shoot the guy with the knife, telling him to put the gun away. But as he is moving, following, keeping his sight on the subject, is there a possibility that an innocent civilian comes within the crosshairs of that weapon? It is possible. And there are tragedies that do happen with that. So to this point, I don't think he takes a shot, because I don't think he had a clear shot. Is he justified at that point? If he's threatening someone with a knife, and that officer, from his training and his experience, feels that there's an imminent threat of death, he has the right to even fire at that point. Now, Sal is saying he doesn't have the right to point a gun at random people, which, watch this video, happens all over. This is a use of force, which CCB would have a field day along with civil defense lawyers. Sal, I cannot disagree with you more. He is not pointing his gun at random people. This is where we disagree very highly. He is not willy-nilly waving his gun around at everybody in the station like some EDP, an emotionally disturbed person, who's just going to start pointing his gun at everybody. He is pointing his gun at a subject who is armed. Are there other people in the station? There are other people in the station. Yes, there are. But that doesn't mean, because there's other people present, that you don't have, one, the right, two, the obligation to try and stop that threat. So now, as you said, as the subject starts to exit the station, it appears that he still has a knife in his hand, because the rest of the crowd is telling him to put it down before he gets shot. They're telling him, put it down before you get shot.
I want to go back. Can we go back into the station for a minute? I just want to go back in the station with what you had just mentioned. If your point, first of all, you don't know if any of those other are hostile.
Keep coming back. Keep going back.
You don't know if any of the other people in there are hostile, and it doesn't seem to be, right? They all kind of jumped over at the same time the officer was jumping. So is this? And again, we don't have full video. So is this just a dispute between the individual with the purple shirt and the black and white pants and somebody else? And if somebody comes into your field of vision when you have your gun pointed at somebody, yeah, that doesn't look pretty, right? But you still have to keep your eye on the target, and that's where firearms control, firearms discipline comes in. Okay. This guy is not arbitrarily jumped over a turnstile and just started letting rounds go off of his gun from a, crazy distance. So he's put time and distance between himself, and he's brought himself to where the threat is. So, if
Right.
you look at, if you any tactical situation, it could be a domestic dispute where you go to arrest somebody and there's a big crowd in the house all of a sudden comes out and they could turn hostile on you. Just so say that you're not going to take police action because there's a hostile crowd. To me, that's not right at all. And pointing your gun at somebody that has a weapon, that's what we do, right? That's what we do. And that's why we're taught firearms discipline and firearms control.
Right. So to Sal's point, to counter Sal's point, he is not pointing his firearm at random people. That's what Sal's statement is, that he's pointing his gun at random people. He's not pointing his gun at random people. And Samara Cohen, we're going to get to that at the end. Okay. But he's pointing it at an adversary. He's pointing at an armed adversary and doing his best at that point to keep his firearm trained on that individual. That's why he's moving around, because the subject is moving and he's moving to keep his firearm trained on the threat. So it's not random. And as I said, if he walks past a civilian or a civilian walks past him, it's quite possible that he could get into a situation where the gun is at some point pointed in the direction of a civilian. And that happens. Okay. And then there was a point.
Ron, there could also be times when an officer crosses your path.
Absolutely.
Another blue, right? And that's why we call crossfire blue on blue. Those are our terminologies that we use, because that happens too. Again, like you said in the beginning, it's police work. It's not pretty. It's not perfect. Okay. But he did a great. He did a great job.
We talk about that, and again, we learn from tragedy, right? Like you said, the crossfire situation. Now you'll see, and we've seen videos where officers are calling out crossfire, watch your crossfire, talking to each other, which is something that we never did when I was a cop.
No.
You might yell at somebody, "Hey, watch your gun! It's pointed at me." Now you're actually warning people to watch your crossfire when you're in the midst of a situation. We showed the video of the shooting in the 123, and that specifically was called out. Watch the crossfire. The supervisor even put it over the radio before he was on the scene.
Right.
The other officers at the scene were also talking about watch your crossfire. So you're 100% correct. And Del Rey says he's acting off duty when the cop is acting on duty when he's off duty. To answer that, Del Rey, I'm not sure if you are or were NYPD, but in the NYPD, as soon as that officer decided to take police action, he's on duty. Even though he's in an off-duty capacity, he's quote unquote on the clock and on duty taking police action. So he is acting like he's on duty because he's taking police action in order to what we perceive him to perceive, if you follow, of saving someone's life, because he believed that someone was going to be stabbed. So now it spills outside. And yeah, he hops the turnstile. He's got his firearm in one hand and he's got his shield in the other, and the shield drops down to the ground and he picks his shield up. You know what? Shit happens.
I love TC fell out an overtime slip.
Well, he's definitely going to get it. He's on overtime slip. The second
he's going to get a lot of overtime right there.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of overtime because there's going to be a duty captain investigation and everything else. And he's on the clock from the minute it happens. But so let's pick it up. You have anything else from the inside?
No, not from the inside. No.
So let's watch him. Let's watch him go outside again, and let's get the volume also.
Hey, yo, put that shit down before you clapping, gang. Oh, dumbass.
Stop it. Stop the video. Put that shit down before he claps you. His friends or these other people, I don't know if they're friends, I don't know who they are, but these other bystanders are telling him to put it down before he shoots him. So to me, that's confirmation that he had a weapon, and other people are telling him to put it down. And then as soon as he gets outside, he starts yelling to somebody else, "Why are you getting involved?" Because somebody else grabbed him to stop him from fleeing. So let's pick it up.
I know I'm doing. Hey yo, why you up in that? Nigga, what the fuck is you doing? Hey yo, chill out. Hey yo, chill out. Move with you right to that.
Stop it.
Move with you right.
Do you hear that, female? Officer. So to me, again, I'm going to counter something that Sal had brought up on his show, is that nobody knew he was a cop. And then also he had nothing to identify himself as a cop. He had his shield. He was pointing his shield out in his hand. And even Sal on the show said multiple times that he dropped his shield. He had his shield out, that he was holding his shield in his hand. That's a way of identifying yourself as a police officer. You don't have to be in uniform to be identified as a police officer. And I agree with you 100%. There should have been more verbal commands given that we could have probably picked up in the video. He's saying things that I can't hear, but you need that command voice, right? You need that command voice. Identify himself as a police officer. Tell him to drop the knife. Also, he should be screaming at everybody to call 911.
Definitely, he definitely should have been yelling, call 911. That may have alleviated. We don't know if anybody else did call 911, right? So it could have been easily somebody doing it. I mean, you see guys selling fruit out on the corner and stuff. That could have easily been one of them call 911. But yeah, I mean, he tries to call 911, or he's calling 911. And that, I'm not saying he did anything wrong, but just that puts him at a disadvantage, right? Because now he literally has to put his shield back in his pocket and take out his phone, because he still has to maintain control of his firearm. So, I think that was the hardest part for him right there, is to call 911. And you know what? If there was a token booth clerk there, which I don't think they have anymore, right? It's all the MTA machines and stuff. Somebody in the past, that token booth closed would have called 911 for you, right? Those
they still have them. I don't know if there was any in right there, or we don't know. They may have been down on the platform, but Sal is saying he's looking at it from a legal perspective, a future court case. We're going to get into that in a second, the legal standings. We'll get into that in a second. But to this point, I think we've been pretty clear on where we stand. And also, just to get back to one point, when you talked about keeping a tactical distance, Sal mentioned yesterday about the 21-foot distance rule that we are taught in the academy, and that's taught. The 21-foot rule is what we are taught, is that if someone with an edged weapon is within 21 feet from you, that even if you shoot them, they can still reach you with that edged weapon before they stop. So that's the 21 feet distance that we're taught. Not to maintain a 21-foot distance. There's no way to sit and try and keep a specific distance from an adversary. Sometimes it's going to be close quarters. Sometimes it's going to be further. Sometimes they're going to close distance on you, Del Rey is coming back with, the philosophy was, when off duty, was to call 911 and observe unless your life is in imminent danger. I'm going to disagree with you, Del Rey, because that's not what you're taught. What I agree with Sal from yesterday, one of the points, because I do agree with Sal on some of the points that he said. One of the points that Sal said was that the minimum requirement is that you observe and report and call 911. 100%, that is your minimum requirement as a police officer. If you observe a crime in progress, that it's your job to call 911. But you're also a sworn law enforcement officer who has the rights and duty in my eyes, duty, because you raised your right hand and you took an oath to protect the life and the property of the citizens of New York, right? So it's not just your life, but you're there to protect the lives of others in the city. And this officer put himself in harm's way to protect the life of whoever was being threatened by that knife, from what our assumption is from looking at this video.
And we said that from the beginning, though. We said that from the beginning. There was something that he could have done. He could have. The minimum thing he could have done was call 911. That's what he could have done. He could have maintained a safe distance, give the description of the perpetrator, give a description of himself for responding officers, and tell them what his observation. Because he, in my opinion, because he felt there was an imminent threat and this guy was going to get stabbed, he wanted to do that, right? So, I mean, I know that the other one was to talk about, not get involved. And that was usually when you had personal interest in it, right? So you weren't going to, if you're having a dispute with somebody, you're not going to, all of a sudden pull out your gun and say, I'm a police officer, because now it's a personal dispute. But right there, I mean, he decided to take action. And I think about it, off duty, he's observing a felony. This is not a misdemeanor. This is not a violation. Violations, you shouldn't, off duty, you don't observe. That's a no-no, right? You don't pull somebody over and say, hey, you came too close to my car. You were following too closely. No, you can't do that. Misdemeanors, very touchy situation. Misdemeanors, you have to look at it and say, is this a serious misdemeanor? And I'm not really sure any serious misdemeanors that exist, right? So, but when you start talking about felonies and somebody taking out a knife, potentially an assault too, possibly a homicide, he decided to take action. So there's nothing wrong with him, pushing forward and doing that. I mean, if I was to investigate that as a captain or above, I would say I have no issues and no qualms at all that he did this, So, I mean, yeah, are there going to be repercussions later on? I can't defend them, and I can't talk about them, because in the Bronx, you can indict a ham sandwich. That. So I mean, could he get indicted? Yeah, he could. Could he end up going to trial? Yeah. But
we're going to get into the legal stuff in a minute. Yeah, let's finish the video, because then I'm gonna tell you what else I agree with Sal about in a couple of minutes. So now he's outside the station, right? And he's not telling everybody to call 911, which is what we should be hearing. We should be telling him to tell other people to call 911. You see the other civilians, who I don't know if they're with him, if they're not with him, if they're just people on the sidewalk that are watching what's going on. They're all trying to convince him to put it down, put it down. The other person saying, put it down before he shoots you. He's saying something here I can't make out, but I believe he told him to put it down. Let's back it up a little bit and get the volume and see if we can get what this officer says.
Hey yo, chill out. Hey yo, chill out. Move with you right this with that. Move with you right this with that.
Drop it. Pull that back.
So the civilians are corralling him and trying to control his right hand and get him to drop whatever he has in his right hand. And at this point, the officer takes out his cell phone, okay, and he's going to call 911 himself. Now is where his situational awareness starts to get a little sketchy, because he's being distracted. But I guess he feels that no one's calling 911. He's got to call 911 himself. Okay? So now here's where I think he gets a little distracted. Okay? And Samara, I'm going to address that in a second also. All right? When we get into the tactics a little bit more. So now he brought his gun in somewhat, and he's calling 911. Now, again, this is a matter of we're going frame by frame,
Well,
But
you
it's a
could
matter
say
of
you
a
could say
second.
the holster at that point, but you don't.
No.
You know, he's concerned about, you know, his head's down in the phone too right now. So
Right.
I mean, and we don't know. The other thing is we really don't know where the knife is at this time. We don't even we don't have a way to judge where the perpetrator or how close he is or whatever. So I mean, that's a tough call right there.
Right. And listen, he said, you know, reholster. We're not going to reholster the gun until the threat has been eliminated, whether the person's in custody or the threat has been eliminated some other way. So again, Sal had Serena Townsend on yesterday, and she's a phenomenal guest, a phenomenal friend to the Finest Unfiltered family. She's been on Sal's show numerous times. She gives great content, great insight, great legal perspective. But I'm going to disagree with something that she said. She was saying that he should have put his gun away. Now, I'm going to disagree with that and I'm going to disagree with Del Rey also, because the threat is still there. When they're outside, you see the civilians trying to secure his right hand and still telling him to put it down. The threat is still there. The threat is still there. So he should not holster his weapon until the threat has been neutralized. And at that point, from what I see, the threat has not been neutralized. So I say he's justified for having his gun out this whole entire time.
Yeah, well, we can't make that call right there because we don't see the perp. We don't know where the knife is. But what I would tell you is after you make the 911 call, put that phone away and bring your shield back up, because just like we've had in the past, we've had blue on blue because they haven't been identified. If you hold that gun out, you better be able to identify yourself to responding officers, and that's a serious situation too, because now you have cops rolling up, and that's why you really have to give a thorough description of yourself when you're talking to that 911 operator. The best description you should be given is of who I am and what I'm wearing, because responding officers need to know that. That's so important.
So let's get to the end of the video, because then we're going to bring up the justifications of where the justifications of what he did come from. So he's on the phone with 911. They're still telling him to put down the knife.
Everybody back up. I'm explaining this to you. Excuse me, I'm trying to explain this to you.
Now there, he loses his tactical advantage there because he got distracted. I think it looked like he was trying to identify where the weapon was.
Right.
Now, this is where I'm going to say, tactics-wise, you're taught the Sewell position, right? For firearms retention, especially in close quarter situations where you're in this type of situation specifically. So let's take a look at let's skip up to let's skip up to number 9.
You see, if he had backed himself up,
right,
he would have been all right. But he puts himself right at that doorway and leaves something to an opening to his right.
Right. So the modified Sewell firearm position is a tactical stance for carrying a firearm, primarily a handgun, designed to maintain a safe muzzle direction while maneuvering, particularly in crowded or close-quartered environments. This position is designed to keep the muzzle of the firearm pointed in a safe direction, typically towards the ground, while the user is moving or in close proximity to others. Scroll down a little. All right. It's often used when moving through crowded areas or when imminent threat level is low. So now, what I think he saw at that point was that the perpetrator had dropped the knife at that point. So then he lowered his firearm. So instead of lowering his firearm to his side like that, he should have went into a modified Sewell position. So let's look at number 10. And you'll see an example that I pulled off the internet, right? So that's 10A. Let me see 10. unless I numbered them wrong. Right? That's the Sewell position. Okay? Whereas you right, that's a modified Sewell position. So I'm going to say modified Sewell position only because he has his phone in his hand still. So his other hand is there. So now that the threat level has reduced and he's backing away like that, the firearm should be there. But again, now listen, I'm not going to criticize him for not being in the modified Sewell position because it's a dynamic situation. His adrenaline is pumping. His heart's going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Okay. Here I'm gonna disagree with John from this morning, where he doesn't like the modified Sewell position because he feels that it's a possibility if somebody grabs you from behind of, you know, getting to your gun because it's across your chest or your stomach, and now the firearm, even though it's pointed at the bottom, you know, if you get into a tussle, you may get shot.
Here's this reason, especially for like the strategic response group when they back up ESU. The Sewell position right here, when you want to draw, you come out, right? You're fast to come out. Having a gun down here, you have to bring it all the way up. So that you're cutting the distance because you don't have to superly extend your arm when you're going to present your firearm from a Sewell position. You come right out, boom, it's out. Up here, you're bringing it up from the side, and like you said, it's protected here, right? If I have to defend myself, I can push back or whatever. But on the side, it's tough right there, and I will have to push back a little bit on John myself. I think that, you know, Sal talks about training and stuff. That's one thing we're trained on, right? We're trained to go to that position to keep our firearm, you know, right there. And I know strategic response does it all the time. ESU does it a little different because they have bunkers and stuff. So, but yeah, right. I mean, and he could have easily done that, you know.
Eric's comment that he doesn't completely agree. When he was in the Marine Corps, #EDM, you know, they learned Sewell was for turning corners and when the threat was low. His threats have not been totally identified. Again, that's what I had said, though. Remember, we don't know. I'm, again, making an assumption from what I'm viewing in the video is that I think at that point the knife has been, the perpetrator has dropped the knife because he seems to have come down a little bit in his posture at that point. When he came around the side towards that door for another angle to get a better angle of view of the perpetrator, I think I see him come down a little bit. So I think that the threat level might have went down a little bit. But my point is he's not pointing the firearm any longer at the perpetrator. So in order for firearms retention, I think the modified Sewell is a better position. But again, this is Monday morning quarterbacking. Monday morning quarterbacking is not to beat the cop up. The Monday morning quarterback is to say, hey, listen, maybe in a similar situation, this is what you should do. And again, it's muscle memory, right? You have to train for this. And then a thing I agree with Sal, and what Sal said is that the NYPD is not, and John and Eric said it today too, with Marlon, the NYPD is not properly trained for how to deal with your firearm and everything while off duty. You get very, very, very minimal training on what you should and shouldn't do. But as far as tactics and tactically what you should be doing, you don't get a lot of training. You don't get a lot of training on how to deal with a situation like this. So, yeah, we're sitting here, we're critiquing. One sec. We're sitting here, we're critiquing. So we're saying, hey, instead of his gun being down there where the girl came from behind and grabbed at his gun, had he had it in a modified Sewell position with his hand in his phone or whatever the case may be, then she may not have been able to grab at that gun because he kind of, you know, lost his situational awareness a little bit by bringing his firearm down to his side like that. And thankfully, he kept a good grip on it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that Eric's right about the Sewell position in close quarter combat. That's to use that a lot. But you're right, too. There's no reason for him to, if he kept it back up and pointed at the perpetrator, that's fine. Okay. He thought if he dropped the knife, and that's why I think he goes around and looks to see if in fact the knife is dropped to confirm. So then he relaxed himself. but he shouldn't, in my opinion, relax himself to where his firearms is completely by his side, unless he's sure of his situational awareness behind him that there's no other threat that could come to him. So had he not walked into that doorway, he would have been fine where he put the position. But again, how do you know there's not another gun there or another knife? I would have put it in the stool position just in case that I had to come back up and present the firearm again. It would have taken a few less seconds, coming from the side of my leg or whatever. So, but
Right.
I mean, in general, like you said, if we were investigating it, all maybe at the end of the UF 49, the report that we do, right? I would only make a recommendation that maybe goes to tactics refresher, or whether at the range or whether at the police academy. But there would definitely be no change in duty status. There would be no modification. There would definitely be no suspension. No way. And like they said earlier in today, he did a great job. I think Eric had promoted him to deputy commissioner by the end of the podcast.
Yeah, and listen, and 100%. Like, as the duty chief, right? People don't understand. So the way it works is, duty captain's usually the first to respond, and then they refer it up to the duty inspector, which could be a deputy inspector or an inspector. The duty chief only gets involved if there's a really high-profile incident, if there's a discharge of the MOS's firearm, or if the duty inspector is going to recommend a change in duty status, because unless it's a must suspend situation, they don't have the authority. It's under the authority of a chief. So if I, as the duty inspector, feel that this officer acted improperly and needed to be modified and or suspended, which modified means, to those who aren't listening, who are in NYPD, means that we're going to take away your firearm while we conduct the investigation, and you're going to go on administrative duties, or suspended, which means obviously, you're being suspended from duties. That is the authority of the chief. So I have to justify my reasoning to the chief. The chief takes all the facts into consideration, and the chief has the authority to approve or disapprove that request for a change in duty status. So to me personally, this situation, obviously I would be involved, because the duty captain is going to have to notify me about an off-duty incident like this. It's not making its way to the chief.
Right.
Because I'm not going to recommend a change in duty status. I found nothing that this officer did to be improper. I found nothing that this officer did that violated the laws and or the NYPD patrol guide or any training. Yes, I would recommend retraining. I've done that in the past with other incidences that I've dealt with, where people need to go for some type of refresher training. So yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. Now let's get in. So I know we jumped ahead on you. And so
I know that they spoke about, like, the Bronx DA is going to indict and stuff. Here's the thing.
Right.
He's off duty. You know what? He took police action. They'll indict somebody on duty in the Bronx. So, I mean, you can't say that was, that was it. That just because he was off duty and he took action, that he's going to definitely get indicted. Dylan, if you do something that they feel is wrong in the Bronx or Manhattan, the DAs, right, they'll indict you for that. So yeah, I mean, you could not have done anything wrong, and they could look to indict you.
So I'm going to get to Eric's question in a second, because he asked it earlier, and it's fitting to what you're saying right now. But what I want to do is, I want to give the audience not just our perspective, our experience as executives for, over 40 years. And I want to tell you, where does the justification come from? Okay, so now this comes away from perspective into the law, right? So let's go back up to number 5, right? It's New York State Criminal Procedure Law 14010. It gives the authority to arrest. So if we can pull that one up, right? So this gives a police officer, right, including those in New York City, that may make an arrest without a warrant, regardless of whether they are on duty or off duty. So there, right there, because the fact that he is a sworn police officer, he has the authority to make an arrest. And if you scroll down a little bit more, you're talking about crimes of felonies and misdemeanors. An officer can arrest a person for a crime which includes both felonies and misdemeanors when they have reasonable cause to believe the person committed a crime, whether it's in their presence or not. Now here, obviously, it's in his presence. And he's going to articulate that he saw this person with the knife and obviously thought there was an imminent threat, right? So now everybody's talking, you know, Sal brought it up. Somebody else brought up about the DA's office. Yeah, listen, we're not saying that because of the current, and this is where it kind of going to answer Eric's question a little bit, because of the political atmosphere that we live in today. A lot of people are saying, don't do anything, don't take action unless you have to take action. Well, I'm not telling people to go out there and be, as Sal said, Rambos, right? I'm not saying that at all. However, if somebody's life is in imminent danger and you make that choice not to stand back, observe, and call 911, which is your minimal responsibility because you will be found in violation and held responsible if you do nothing and it's found out that you were on the scene and witnessed it. So you do have a duty to report to 911 what you're observing and observe the scene. But if you take action there, in this situation specifically, you are covered by the New York State Criminal Procedure Law. You're also covered by the New York State General Municipal Law 50K. So the General Municipal Law 50K, I just cut the one main piece out, right? It provides that an act or omission from which such judgment or settlement arose occurred while the employee was acting within the scope of his public employment. We've already established that he was. He was acting within his scope of employment because he had the right to intercede when he saw the crime in the discharge of his duties and was not in violation of any rule or regulation of the agency at the time the alleged damages were sustained. So again, our opinions of the situation is that he did not violate any NYPD policies and procedures. And that's what I had challenged some people that have a differing opinion to present to me what policies or procedures or laws were violated. Again, it doesn't look pretty, especially to a civilian, especially to somebody with not a police eye, especially to someone who may be of an opinion that you shouldn't take any police action at all unless you have to. I understand that you would say, sit back, call 911 because you're going to get jammed up. If you don't get jammed up with the job, okay, and you get like myself or yourself to respond and give an objective view to the situation and make no change in duty status, that, yeah, a CCRB may come in. Yes, the CCRB may find that you used excessive force by taking your firearm out, and that as you were keeping your firearm trained on the threat, that your firearm passed the view of a civilian that was not involved. Now, that civilian was subject to excessive use of force. I say bullshit, and he's never going to get found guilty if he takes it to the trial room for that. But it doesn't, and we've talked about CCRB just last week. Eric has talked about it ad nauseum, that the CCRB doesn't give an objective view of things and is not fair, and that there are unfair substantiations of rules and of complaints, rather, that don't hold muster when you are given due process. I don't know, even the Bronx DA, looking at this entire situation, that the Bronx DA could find any criminal act that they could charge this officer with at all, at any point. CCRB, yes. He's going to get a CCRB probably. And he may be substantiating the CCRB because it's BS. However, I don't believe that he has any concerns about a district attorney, a grand jury, or anything like that. And I'll go one step further. I think that we've proven that if he perceives that there was an imminent threat to someone's life, i.e. the knife, and someone imminently getting stabbed, had he shot that individual, discharged his firearm, and shot that video and shot that subject, he's justified and would be indemnified.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Just to jump in, well, you talked about, off duty and the CPL. I would say that also, though, a misdemeanor, if you take action which you're allowed to for a misdemeanor off duty, it's I would highly not recommend that. Not recommend that because it's really scrutinized by the police department. It's frowned upon, right? That's when we should definitely step back, observe, and call 911. Your involvement in that they don't look highly on that. And to Eric's point, I think at any time anything could turn into political optics where the politics could, policy, or the politicians could say it's bad, and it could end up on the front of the newspaper, and you could be the next Chauvin or anybody else. You could be the guy on the front of that paper. And it's not just with one job. I'm saying it could be with any job. It's not just with off duty. It could be on duty. So I think every day you take that and you have to deal with it. That's the unfortunate thing. Like Samara Cohen tells right here, tell that to Sergeant Barry, right? In the 4-3, shoots an individual, EDP, armed with a bat. Justified? Yes. Was it also a target at the police academy? If you remember, one of the paper targets had a perpetrator holding a bat. After Sergeant Barry, O'Neill got rid of it. It was no longer part of it. But yeah, I think at any job, I say you should worry about it in the back of your head, but I also say you can't worry about it, because I think that will have a detrimental effect to you. If you start to hold back and you start to hesitate, that could be very detrimental to you. The next thing you know, you're like, should I pull my gun out? I will not. If you start to engage, do everything you have to do to engage. Because if he was hesitant and he came up and he pretended he was going to grab his gun and he was going for his shield, and this guy came running up, he could have stabbed him right in the chest. So
Right.
I mean, you're right, but politics definitely plays it. We're in it, right? We as bosses, we play politics all the time. It's part of the job, unfortunately, because of the notoriety of what a police officer does, the authority that the police officer does. Politics is huge in it, and politicians use it all the time, to their advantage.
Yeah.
So.
And he's talking about, political optics. Like let's go back to, and I think he might even be referencing this. Let's go back to that case a couple of years ago where that officer was punching the girl in Staten Island who had punched him like 6 or 7 times in the face, and he wound up getting suspended because the mayor said it didn't look good. Well, police work doesn't always look good, doesn't always look pretty. Now here, he's using force because he's got his firearm out, so that is a level of force. Right? Verbal command is a level of force, right? So there is a use of force here. It doesn't look pretty when his gun almost gets ripped out of his hand. It doesn't look pretty when there's people scattering and you see him with his firearm moving around. Now, I totally disagree with the way it was presented, that he was, random, pointing his gun at random people. I don't see that at all. So I don't think that he acted in a reckless manner whatsoever. And I think that he is covered by the law. Let's look at 6A, Graham v. Connor. Right? Graham v. Connor. I keep coming back to it because it's a Supreme Court case. That says the reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene rather than with 20/20 vision of hindsight. Now, I know that people are going to say, but, when you're looking at the video, just like we did, we're going frame by frame and breaking it down. But when you get into the legalities of it, you have to look at it as what did this officer perceive at the time? And, Joe Rogan, I'm going to answer your question in a second because I'm going to give you an example of something that happened to me. Okay.
Can you just answer Samara Cohen, because she says we're failing to spell out the underlying crime? I thought we did. That was he had a knife and he was trying to stab somebody, so that's either a attempted felony assault, or if he stabbed them, it's a felony assault, and if he stabbed them in the right place, it might be even attempted murder. So
the crime is a threat of deadly physical force.
Right.
Having a knife and threatening somebody with a knife is a threat of deadly physical force because that knife could kill you. So, that's
from what we see, right? We don't know for sure.
100%.
So
nobody's talked to this officer. We haven't gotten it. Listen, we're an hour and a half in. I appreciate Laura reposted the stream. So let's like, share, subscribe this podcast, and let's get it out there. Let's get the algorithms going. Help us out with the Finest Unfiltered, the executive perspective, and get the algorithm going. Now, Joe Rogan had posed a question. I wonder if Ron or Rob would have intervened. So now I'm gonna give you an example. When I was a cop back, and again, different era, different mentality in the political spectrum, in the city of New York, in the country, different views about the police. So I was at a movie theater on Staten Island. For those of you from Staten Island or the area that know the area, it was the old UA Theater on Highland Boulevard, Mill Road, in the corner next to Napoli Pizzeria. And I came out of the movies. So, of course, there's a crowd coming out of the movies, and it was in afternoon, so there was a younger crowd. This is back when we used to go to movies, not just streamed everything, right? And two kids start fighting. Crowd starts circling around the kids. What do? Let's go. I'm with another off-duty cop. Let's go. And let's get out of here. We were with a couple of girls on a double date. Keep walking to the car. I'm not getting involved in a fist fight. Like you said, misdemeanor, right? A fist fight, a simple assault. I'm not getting involved. Let's call 911. Let's get the cops coming, but let's get the hell out of here. Then I hear he's got a knife. Now the antennas go up. I turn around. I see the crowd start to splinter away from the fight because, like it's a tight circle when people are fighting. Now they're starting to spread out because now the kid's got a knife. So now I had a little 2-inch snub nose Centennial, 5-shot revolver. And I'm like, holy shit, this kid's got a knife. Now, and I'm quite a distance away. So I take out my firearm, identify myself as a police officer. I didn't take out my shield. I took out my gun. I don't even know where my shield was. It could have back in the day. Most of us, we used to keep it in a wallet, folded in a wallet in your back pocket. Back then, nowadays, you keep it more where you can take it out, right? So I start stutter stepping forward towards him, and I'm screaming, drop the knife, drop the knife. I might have been saying a few other expletives, but for YouTube purposes, I'm just going to say drop the knife. And I'm stutter stepping forward towards this person. The kid looks at me dead in the eye and stabs the kid twice. I'm like, now I'm still stutter stepping forward. Drop the knife, drop the knife. Now he turns towards me Now he's squared off to me. I'm still probably 15 yards away, 10 to 15 yards away, right? So you're talking about 30 to 40 feet away from this person, 2-inch, not the most accurate gun, right? I have a crowd. If I miss this kid, I might hit somebody else. I'm literally thinking of this in my head. I continue to approach. Like I said, he turned towards me, takes one step towards me. I'm totally justified if I'm going to shoot this guy. But I choose not to take the shot because I got to put my head on the pillow at the end of the night. That if I would have accidentally hit an innocent bystander, I got to put my head on the pillow. But I would have been justified. And actually, we had conversations offline, you brought up, the person with the knife that just stabbed somebody, would be charged if a civilian, innocent civilian, would have been killed by my bullet, not me. Okay? Long story short, he does drop the knife. He starts taking off. I'm able to cut him off. I tackle him. I bang my knee up pretty well. I'm laying on top of him. My gun might have been in his ear at the time, telling him to stop moving, And I'm yelling for people to call 911. And I'm telling the other off-duty cop that really didn't get that involved in the situation, now he's holding other people back because he doesn't know if anybody else is involved. So he's holding the crowd back. And I'm like, so-and-so, call 911. And I'm telling other people, call 911. Now, everybody didn't have a cell phone in the early 90s, right? So now you hear the sirens coming. The 122 is only a mile down the road. You hear the sirens coming. We see the lights flashing. And then all the lights get turned off and there's nothing going on. So they must have called it into Mill Road and Highland Boulevard. They never came in the parking lot. So we're like, listen, let's keep calling 911. And finally a car decides to come in and check the parking lot. They see the commotion. They come over. Now, I don't have my shield out. The other guy has his shield out. I'm on top of the guy with my gun, holding him at bay. The cop gets out. Thankfully, I knew the cop from softball, and I told him, whatever, say his name is Rob. Rob, it's Ron. You know me. I'm on the job. I'm on the job. We got you. So they take control of him. I roll off, and I actually, because I was in so much pain, I handed my gun off to a uniform at that point, and he was in custody. So yeah, you know what? I probably would have intervened had I seen the same situation because I had a very similar situation when I was a young cop.
TC's killing me. He's great tonight. He's on the money. He talks about Ron just got involved to impress his date.
My first and last date with that young lady. Because funny aside, because we took her car, right? As I'm laying on top of this guy, right? My pants are ripped, my knees bleeding. I have my gun, in his ear, holding him at bay. He rolls up, rolls the window down. Come on, let's go. Get in the car. Let's get out of here. Come on, let's go. I'm like, that's not happening. Last date. So no, and to answer Sammy's question, no, not.
So if it was me, it depends on two things. One, have I already seen the movie? Because if I didn't see the movie, I'm not wasting my whole night. All right. If I was on the way out, then I may engage if somebody's life is in danger. But it's all about the movie, I'm spending the night out.
What the movie was. I don't even remember what the movie was.
See what happened? Your whole night was ruined. You never saw the girl again. You never even remember what the movie was. But
nope.
No. All right. And I think, didn't you say that you saw him later on in life?
Yeah. The funny thing, months later after the case goes through court and everything else, and this kid actually gets, gets convicted, and I'm out at a local watering hole on Staten Island, and kid comes up to me, starts talking to me. So I'm like, all right, I don't know. He's like, you don't remember me? I'm like, no, I don't remember you. He lifts his shirt up and shows me the scars from his surgery because he had to go into surgery. One of his lungs was collapsed from the stabbing. So it was a very serious wound. And yeah, he bought me a couple of drinks that night. But
There you go.
I didn't keep in touch with him after that. But it was, it was nice for him to come up to me. But so yeah, I think that answers the question. But yeah, Rob, in all seriousness, you were a cop, not now in retirement, because I think it's a little different, right? Because we don't have arrest powers anymore with civilians. But put yourself in that cop's position. You're a cop walking into the station. Do you get involved?
That's a really good question. I think I do. I'm not sure though, because I would be a little more observant, in my opinion, personally, and because kids mess around. Kids mess around with knives. They, one could be playing with the other or whatever. So, where you acted on the incident where he was actually stabbing him. So I don't.
I engaged.
Well, he turned and looked at you, right? He turned and looked at you.
As soon as they said he has a knife, and I turned and saw that the kid had a knife in his hand, I drew my firearm and started engaging and told him to drop the knife.
And then he stabbed anyway, right?
Yeah, he heard me. He saw me because he looked at me. Then he turned back to the kid and started stabbing him. I'm like, holy, geez. He acknowledged me, and then he did it. But yeah, no, I engaged as soon as I saw him with the knife.
It's I would think that I would engage because that's your nature. That's how, and I think what it is like it kind of kicks in, right? It's like all of a sudden your subconscious tells you, all right, get in there and do what you got to do. And your training and your experience all kick in. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I would probably get involved. I'm not,
Yeah.
So
listen, and I'm not, and listen, and we're not sitting here and we're not faulting anybody. Your minimum requirement is to observe and report.
Right.
But, like someone else had said, had that officer sat back, observed, and called 911, you're putting that potential victim in a precarious situation where they may now get stabbed, seriously injured, or killed because you didn't take the action.
Right.
Are you justified? Yes, you're justified not to take action. You're legally not bound. Let's get that straight. We're not saying that you're legally bound to take police action off duty at all. But your minimum requirement, as Sal stated, is to observe and report and call 911 that you're observing a crime in progress. That is your requirement. If you don't do that, you can get in trouble with the police department. You can't get arrested for it, but you can get in trouble with the police department. But there is nothing that mandates, whether you're in the police department guidelines or in the law, that mandates that you do take police action.
I got to give TC credit again, because he's right. As cops, we are stupid. And when you're all sitting around together, everybody says, I'll never get involved. And then he's right. When it happens, we're all in, right? Everybody's like, where are you going? I'm going in. I got to get in. You just said you weren't getting involved. But that's 100% right there. That's what it is, That's we all jump in,
You get
so true.
Listen, and again, we're not beating. We love Sal. Sal's part of the Finest Unfiltered family. He has a different take on this. That's fine. I think that we just wanted to present our take. I think we got really deep into this. I don't think we expected to get this deep into it. So, you have any other thoughts on this one, on this part?
No, I think I just hope nothing happens to the police officer. I think he did a great job. He did jump in when maybe some of us wouldn't. So he should be commended. And I mean, it's easy for us to sit back and Monday morning quarterback. And I mean, as bosses, we had to do that. But you had to. anytime I looked at any situation where somebody would call me up, you want to put yourself in that position. Like, what would I have done? Like, just like if you were the duty inspector and they called you and said, this is what you did, you would have kicked back to say, hey, when I was in Staten Island at the UA theater, you know what, I did that too. So I think the officer did right. So yeah, is it hard to, you can't get into the mindset of that officer at the time. You look at his actions, and he did everything what I felt was appropriate. And does he need a little bit of retraining? Yeah, but all he did is he let his guard down at the end. Other than that, I think he did an outstanding job.
I agree, and I don't understand Samara Cohen's point that this almost cost the cop his career. Is it worth it? I don't understand that comment at all. If you can clarify a little bit, because to be honest, even if that officer had his gun taken from him by that girl, I don't know that I would have had a change in duty status in that situation if I had seen the video.
Yeah,
Because you have to show gross negligence. It's a dynamic situation, and
what she did could happen in any job. It could happen in any job you're on.
100%.
You
have to show negligence in losing your weapon, not just losing your weapon.
All right, you want to go into some questions there? Delray's asking. So I know Delray asked a question early on.
Yeah, we were gonna talk to you about for those of you in the law enforcement lifestyle and the law enforcement profession. A lot of people sit in on meetings with the bosses, and the bosses, will sometimes ask questions and want engagement. And we were going to talk about, do the bosses really want to hear your questions? Do they really want your input? And there's bosses that dictate at meetings. There's bosses that are inclusive in meetings, and the positives and negatives to those things. So I guess we went long on the middle topic. So yeah, if anybody has any questions,
I know. What? Go ahead.
Yeah, no. If anybody has any questions, pop them in the chat now, and I'm going to start going through the tutorial. So if you need a pen and a piece of paper, I'm going to quickly go through a PowerPoint, only a couple of slides, to how you would change your name. Like my name comes up as Ron Leyson when I'm in the chat, when I'm logged in. Yours comes up as Rob LuKach. Some people come up as TC or just Lily. Lily has a picture. TC has a T. Unique Mastiffs has a picture of a Mastiff dog. So there's ways to do that so that you're not identified in the chat and people can't tell. Joe Rogan, if that's your real name, you have a J. Marlon, he's at Fire Detective. That's how he has his name. So let's get into how to change your name in YouTube, your handle, and your picture. All right. So the first thing that you want to do is, while you're logged in the lower right corner, you click on your picture, right where it says you. So whether that's either a picture, an initial, or whatever, you click on that, and that's going to open it up to the next screen, which is your channel, right? So mine is Ron Leyson. That's what my YouTube channel is under, right? So you can either click on your picture or click on where it says view channel. That's going to bring you to your page, right? And then it says you manage your videos if you don't have any videos or whatever the case may be. But to the right of that, just below it, you're going to see like the pencil mark or the pen thing, right? To edit, just click on that. Click on that. Now you're in your channel settings. Now this is where the screen, this looks a little bit busy, but I'm just showing you, these are the three things. On the top is where your picture is. If you have a picture, you can change it by clicking that. And then again, this is off of a phone. So most people are using your phone, right? So you click on your picture, and now you can add a picture of your dog. You can have no picture there, whatever the case may be. Or you have your name and your handle. Those are the things that you're going to want to change, right? But first, the first thing you want to do on the bottom where it says privacy, keep all my subscriptions private. Just toggle that over. This way, if you want to subscribe to the Finest Unfiltered channel, you could subscribe and it's private. And nobody will know that you're subscribed to the channel. Okay? It'll count as a subscription to us, and you can get notified of all the shows. And we put out, Marlon puts out a lot of shorts of the videos from the shows, and you'll get notified when those come up. But to change your name and your handle, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to click on that pen next to it where your name is. Your name appears. Just type any name you want, and that is the name that's going to show up. Nighthawk 13666. That's what he chooses his name to be. Then when you click save, it brings you back to your settings. You do the same thing again for your handle. Mine's Ron Leyson with a couple of numbers next to it, right? You change your setting, you change your handle by doing the same thing. Press that pen mark, and then you just press save. And that's it. I know, death by PowerPoint. I know. That's
TC's killing me, man. He's going to change his name to Mike Hunt.
What is he saying?
He's changing his name to Mike Hunt.
Okay. All right. So do we have any questions queued up?
I know Delray 53 asked one early on in the chat.
Did you write it down?
I wrote it down. It was relative to the requesting a recommendation from the a supervisor or CO. When do you do highly recommend? When do you don't? And I guess right there, that's the question. So I mean, you want to go? I mean, we both did them a lot. So
yeah, I mean, listen. When you're a commanding officer, I was a commanding officer at 2 different precincts, right? Rob was the executive officer of the Special Operations Division. He was in charge of the emergency services. So, people come to us and they ask for recommendations, right? And the process has changed because the process wasn't as fair. The process used to be they'd come into you with a CO's recommendation, ask you to fill it out and sign it because they want to go somewhere. And a lot of COs would take it and throw it in their basket and go, okay, guy, we'll get back to you. And they'd never get back to the person because they're selfish and they want to keep, if the person is wanting to leave and they're a talented person and an asset to your command, they want to be selfish. They want to keep you there. I was never that way. I was always from the school that if you're working hard for me and you want to move on to your career, it's my job to help you to get to a better place in your career. So you fill out the CO's rec and you give it back to the officer, and the officer puts it with their application for wherever they want to go. Now it's done online in the post system, where the officer is going to go into the post system. They're going to fill out their application for where they want to go. The CO gets a notification in their email, and there's actually a time frame where they have to answer that email with a CO's recommendation. Now, what are the CO's recommendations? Highly recommend, or do not recommend, right? And I believe part of his question was, how do I decide whether I'm going to highly recommend somebody, just recommend somebody, or do not recommend somebody, right? Now, I know we've talked about these CO's recs in the past, and you've talked about how much weight they carry when you're doing your interviews for emergency services, right? When somebody's coming in for emergency services, you got to have a highly recommend in order to pretty much move forward in the process. Because basically when a CO gives you a recommend, they're really not recommending you. They're doing it because they don't want to bury you and say, I don't recommend you for this position. But some COs put recommend because they know the person's not going to get the job or the position, because again, they have to give the recommendation and they're being selfish. You may deserve a highly recommend. How do you come to that point where I'm going to say highly recommend? I'm going to say it's because you did your job well. Whatever your job was in the command, you did your job well. You came to work on time, you weren't chronic sick, and you did your job well. So I'm not going to hold you back because you came and you did your job. Now, I may say recommend because you're one of these people that, comes to work, gives me your 8.5 hours of the bare minimum and goes home. So do I think that you really deserve to move on? Or do I think that somebody else is more deserving in that spot? Then I might say I just recommend. I don't think I've ever put a do not recommend on a CO's recommendation.
No, I never did a do not recommend. I did do just recommend. And like Delray 53 is asking, did your job well? How? Like, okay, let's just basically back then it was based on your activity, your response to radio runs, things that I observed out in the field, and recommendations from your squad sergeant and your platoon platoon commander. So you kind of gathered it all together. I will tell you that if you the only one time I did where it was just recommend because the activity was really low, the person really wasn't like a high energy person, and it was actually I was still the XO of the 2-3. I may have been the acting CO at the time, and he wanted to go to ESU, and I said to him, I could give you a highly recommend, but keep in mind that they're going to look back and say, what they look at your activity, look at your sick record, look at a lot of other things. And if that's not up to par, they're going to ask me why I would even put highly recommend. So you basically have to be across the board, a pretty good candidate. And I will tell you that you should always, if you don't get a highly recommend for anything in Special Operations Division, you will not get an interview. The performance evaluation system downtown will bump you out because we only take the highly recommend. So yeah, it's hard to do. Take your time as a supervisor, as a captain or above that's writing the recommendation and write it appropriately, and make sure that you want to push your people ahead. The other thing I really hated, and I did speak about this the last time we actually talked about this, was that when a CO puts in, I do not recommend at this time until I get a suitable replacement. That's bullshit. All right.
That's not acceptable.
Don't hold somebody back. You don't hold anybody back because you think it's going to hurt, adversely affect you. You should never do that. If there's a guy that's good enough and ready to go, or a girl that you really believe in that could be great in one of these specialty units, you don't hold that person back because of your own personal preference that it's going to affect you personally. You'll get somebody else, and you bring somebody up to their level, but don't ever hold somebody back. That's that one. It hits me the worst.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Somebody asked what the adjudication was on my off-duty incident. He was found guilty, and he did some.
Yeah, I think that was Stephen S.
Yeah, he did some.
Good friend of the podcast. Good friend.
Very good friend. Actually, made his way out to Derek's funeral, where we met him in person. Where I met him, I was able to be there and met him in person. This gentleman, we really appreciate your support, and the support you give him to Eric will never be forgotten. But yeah, he was adjudicated. I think he wound up pleading guilty. I had to go to grand jury several times with the case, and then he wound up taking a plea deal because. It's not just the he said, she said. It was witnessed by a police officer. And I don't remember what the argument or the altercation, how it began, started. All right, QC Beast has a question. When you get
can we go back? Right. We had ones earlier on.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
And Joe Rogan, I think, asked about Hook to get into ESU. So, first of all, I'm not a Hook anymore. Yeah. I'm not a Hook, that's like we've said in the past, right? On the job, you're the best. When you retire, you're a pest. So I've called for people and they've gotten absolutely nothing. What I will tell you,
I remember you called me up pissed off.
What I'm telling, I was fuming, man. Like I got totally blown off. But what I'm telling you is look at whatever unit you're going to, and I've said this before in the past, look at any other unit that you're going to and look what they do. Learn what they do, and then either you do it on your own accord, or you get that training and you bring yourself up to that level. So when you go there, you become very impressive on your interview. So
Right, Rob, you talked about it. For emergency services, what should they do? Hey, go out and get your EMT license on your own. Even though you go to
Right.
the EMT school, if you come there as an EMT, it shows that you're interested in something like that. Or if you have prior experience, like I had, prior experience with EMS before I was on the job, going in and taking, hazardous material courses and other types of courses, things like that. Whatever you can bring to the table to make you look better than the guy next to you or the girl next to you on paper. Because if we don't know you, we're going by how you present yourself, but also what your qualifications are. And listen, you may have just been an good active cop, and then we take your interview into consideration or whatever the case may be. And then, listen, that starts in the precinct level too.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I used to tell the recruits the day they got hired that the path for their career starts today. And what you do from this day forward and your work ethic that you put forward is going to make a name for yourself. And that name is going to follow you throughout this job.
Yeah.
Did you have any other
Bones 1999 early on also. I think it was similar to what Eric had asked later on. It's about when you become a captain, there's the politicians, political, does it get like politically involved becoming a captain? I know you like I don't know if it's reference obviously the appointments right now are political, right?
above the rank of captain?
Above the rank of
Be
captain.
clear to those who aren't familiar with the NYPD, captain is a civil service exam, and so you get promoted to captain by civil service. Above that is an appointment by the police commission.
Yeah, and then also like
you had Pearson or Banks or
you had some community council meetings, right, that were political, right? So I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, and you remember then at a certain point they were asking the community to decide whether or not you were an adequate captain for a precinct.
Yes, that's part of that's still part of the CO vetting process.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was. I think that was asked early on. I think that might bring us up to. Oh, I think it's Racinio, Puerto Rico. She asked if Zoharm became the mayor, do you think a lot of police officers would retire? And I think, and somebody else answered her later on, or him, and said, yeah, there will probably be retirements anyway, but I could see, I mean, because of what Adams does, what Cuomo did with all the state laws and the legislation and the city council laws, I could see a mass exit that could come. And I could also, and I'm not sure if it's she or he, Puerto Rico, also said that there's a possibility that people will retire early. Yeah, absolutely. Depending on the administration, there may be people that flee to other municipalities because of the signing bonuses and things like that. So
yeah, I'm gonna go back to the political point.
Okay.
As far as from my experience as a precinct commander in 2 different precincts, there's the side that you addressed where politics come into play for political help, so to speak, in getting those discretionary promotions above the rank of captain. But once you become captain, politics does come into play into your position depending on where you're working. Now, you working in emergency services, you're not going to have the same experiences with the local politicians as I am. You may get a phone call that this politician is going to go for a helicopter ride or, want to tour a truck or something like that. But I had to deal with the politicians on a day-to-day basis with their staff in what, complaints they were getting in their office, work hand in hand with them to improve the community and discuss the needs of the community. So you have to work with these politicians. A lot of them think they have more clout than they have. They think that they're going to come and tell you how you're going to run the precinct and what your cops are going to do. And some people will be fearful of politicians. I was always open and honest with the politicians, worked with them, you got to know your audience as well. And funny aside with that, I had one politician, local politician, He was a state assemblyman. Oh, there's a picture of me at the PSA 7 Community Council with now Chief Rob Galatelli, who was the CO at the time. That was Eric's boss when I first got to Housing Borough Bronx, Queens. But aside from going to the community council meetings and dealing with local politicians and the community, you know, you have to deal with these people, right? So I dealt with these local politicians, and at the time he was a state assemblyman, and then he's now terming out as a city council member. I think this is his last year, and he's terming out. But it's funny, he came to me when I was leaving the 110 and said, Ron, listen, when you know there's a council seat that's opening up in the district where you live, you should really run for that position. And I turned to him and I said, listen, we worked for the common goal of improving this community. But as far as we never talk politics, as far as politics, I don't think we could be further apart. And he jokingly said, because of the way I was with the community, because it was about, you know, just improving the community, you know, oh, this is when we go bipartisan to get behind somebody, because there was other politicians, and of course they were all, you know, Democratic in that area, that were going to get behind me. But I didn't want to leave the job and get involved in politics. I mean, it would have been a good spot for like somebody like John. I think, like you said, John, very well versed in the politics of things. But so yeah, there's definitely politics get involved. They do influence, and sometimes you do have to, you know, you get phone calls that, you know, now they're calling the mayor's office or they're calling the chief's office, and you know, you may have to give a little bit of more attention to certain things that you wouldn't have. But you know, it was what it is. So there's a question from QC Beast. When you get highway therapy, how do they figure out where to send you? Now, highway therapy. Highway therapy is when downtown, One Police Plaza, for the most part, decides that you did something that they didn't like, and they're going to transfer you to a new command. And they're not going to make it convenient for you. It's an unofficial way of punishing you. And we call them shoestring transfers sometimes. How do they figure out where they're going to send you? Where is the most inconvenient place that you could work? And I'll give you an example. When somebody lives in Staten Island, they get sent to Queens North. Things like that. And then you got to travel. So
yeah, what they do is, Ron, they look at where you live. They say, Rob LuKach lives in Orange County. Okay.
Brooklyn
So
South.
let's see how it is. Let's see, maybe Coney Island would be a good choice.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So they go here and they go here.
Not even Staten Island, because you could go through Jersey.
No, yeah, I could cut through. I would have to go all the way out to, I'd hit two bridges, I think, right? I get the Verrazano, I get the Goethals. So now I'm all the way out here. I'm paying 2 tolls. They look at the spread out the furthest way. I can't tell you how many times
Yep.
I heard guys would be like, oh my God, I can't believe where they're sending me, you know? And it's like, you know, the good thing is once in a while you get a good boss as a CO or whatever, and then he'll be like, you know what, just pay your penance for the 6 months, and I'll see what we can do to get you somewhere closer, you know, because you don't want to. It's not fair. It's not fair to the guy, but you know.
Yeah. All right. HFL has a question. How did you critique your cops when you were squad sergeant?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I tried to do it uniformly across the board. I treated everybody equal, right? So I wanted to make, again, I hate to say it, but activity is a big thing. It's also, back when I was a sergeant, so you looked for activity. That included rests, summonses. I also looked at how many radio runs they responded in this sector and stuff. When I was a sergeant, you're out on patrol, which is a good thing, because now you can see how guys respond to jobs, how they interact with people. You might be backing them up on a domestic call, right? So you want to get the full gambit. And what the most important thing is when I critique them is when it was a thing I did. I was probably taught it. It's not my thought. I probably stole it from somebody else. Try to keep a journal of each officer and list everything, that the positive things and maybe the negative things, and then when you write that evaluation, you don't have to think, let me just put a generic bullshit, evaluation. No, you can go back to specifics and say, hey, I remember that on that job, how Ron handled that domestic and de-escalated everything and was really great the way he talked to him. And then eventually he had to make the arrest, and how the guy gave up completely, like just said, okay, I'll go with you. All of those things you want to put on a piece of paper, or now and probably on your phone or a computer, so that you have it and you can reference it. That's the way.
I cannot agree with you more. Right there, we are simpatico, my friend. I will add this. I will add this. Now I lost my thought. Oh, what did I want to say? I wanted to say.
Well, I like the fact that you were agreeing with me. So
no, I agree with you, because you got to take. Listen, do you know? Is the guy coming to work and is he shit canning everything and he doesn't want to be there, right? Oh no, I know what I was going to say. It's also important to critique them as you go along. Don't wait for the quarterly and the annual evaluations. Address situations, both positive and negative, as they arise. We're taught as bosses from the beginning, and some people do it a lot better than others, right? You want to admonish in private unless it's an imminent need to interject in a situation that's ongoing, and you praise in public. But I used to hate this. I come in and be handling like appeals. Don't tell somebody they suck at the end of the year and you never said anything all year long.
Totally.
Yeah. If their performance is not up to par, then address it as you observe it. So that's how I would do it. I'll give you this one.
I was going to go with Joe Rogan real quick. It was earlier. He said, how come Rob had a 1-star as the SODXO and Valdez has 2 stars as the... So he's stabbing me. Joe Rogan's stabbing me in the heart right here.
Joe Rogan is throwing
he went right for the jugular, man. I'm right now. I need a quick clot or something, man, because I'm dying here. But yeah, all right, Joe. To your point, I don't know why, and I don't think it was the proper chain of command. And prior to Valdez being a 2-star, Wilson Aramlis, who's now the CEO of a special operation, was a 2-star in that spot. So yeah, it was hard for a 1-star in SOD to talk to somebody in a subunit that's a higher rank than I was, but I did it diplomatically. Right. And when I felt there was pushback, I would have to say to Chief Whedon, who's a 3-star boss. I don't know. I get a little pushback here.
Right.
So I had a little weight behind me, but I mean, the real story is, I'm gonna have to say, yeah, I know why, but I wasn't lucky enough to get that 2nd star. But I'm happy, where I was. But I had a good position. So really, what matters is, to me, is a position, right? If you're in a good position and you got a good spot, that's what matters, and everything else comes later on. I know. Here's my quick story. When I went to ESU as a captain, I never thought I was going to be promoted. And anybody that came to ESU as a captain, and I was in, it says, you're not going to get promoted. You're just coming here to be an ESU captain. And every one of us were like, I will absolutely unequivocally accept that, because this is a great job. And did other things happen during the road? Absolutely. I was just lucky to be in that spot. So, yeah. But now, Joe, thanks. I got a patch on it, and I should be all right for the rest of the show here.
Silverio Lorsi asked, what are your thoughts on the movie TV unit? I think it is a useless unit, that they should have private security and special attention from the command concerned.
I know that a lot of guys get gigs with that, though, don't they, afterwards? It's a good stepping stone to become a movie star.
Yeah. Well, listen, it also, I've seen a million ESU guys in TV shows and everything else because of their expertise.
Yeah, and they wear I don't know how they get away with it, but they wear the uniform and everything. I guess the job.
Yeah, but they changed the collar brass.
Yeah, they got different.
It'll be like Precinct 5-5 instead of truck 5 or truck 7 or whatever the case may be.
It's
You're
so
allowed
funny
to wear,
when
you're allowed to
I'm-
wear the uniform, and I'm
yeah,
sure they
with
have
permission,
employment.
right? I mean, it's so funny
No, but
when I'm
it's
watching.
a costume. They're on a
It-
set. It's a costume.
Yeah, I mean, when you're watching the TV, I'm like, hey, I know that guy. I'll usually,
Yeah.
if it's on
First
Netflix,
time I'm
or
watching
something,
it,
I'll
I see
put-
Eddie Bogdanowicz, a good
Yeah.
friend of mine, that I knew from, before I was on the job. And I'm like, holy crap, there's Eddie,
There
taking
he
a
is.
door on the Law and Order, All right.
I mean,
let's
the only
see what
thing
we
I could
got.
say is at least the ESU guys I know, when they're playing ESU there, they wear ESU, So
Yeah. Let's see. Do you find any others? Let's be proactive.
Del Rey asked about department recognition. Who did you decide who was on the precinct board?
Me personally, I like the special operations lieutenant to be in charge of the board because they had a better grasp of police work. I did not agree with a lot of commands that had their admin lieutenant sit on the board. I didn't like that. I like the special operations or the special projects at certain times when we had those positions to be the board chairperson. I also wanted somebody on the board to be from patrol, somebody to be a specialized unit, right? And then whoever else they can grab. But those were my requirements as to who I picked to be on the board. And I wanted them to be fair. And I'd say, if you have a question, come and ask me my opinion, because to be honest, I never rubber stamped them. I would change EPDs to MPDs, MPDs to EPDs. I had Lieutenant Dim come to me one time with some pretty inflated recommendations, because that's the way it was. I said, this is never going to pass muster past me. So let's sit down, let's talk about this, and tell me what you really think. And he knew that they weren't, commendations,
You know what I would do when I had my board? I would usually say, I'm not going to tell you what I think that should be for the medal, because I don't want you all to be a yes man to me.
Right.
I want you to tell me what you think, and then I would take a vote. Who thinks this is a commendation? Who thinks this is meritorious? Who thinks this is an excellent police duty? And then we'd go like that. But yeah, you want active guys, and I usually always had a union guy with me too. I said, because you're out there, these guys, how everything is. So I would always pick somebody from the union. I think Simply E asked a question earlier too. He said, did you ever look up to a member of the upper echelons at one PP? If so, who and why?
Pop that question up. I missed it. I'm sorry. When was
It
that?
says, did you ever look up to a member of the upper echelons of one PP? If so, who and why? So
Wow.
I'm gonna say Joe Esposito.
Yeah, he's obviously the first one that's going to pop up in your head.
I mean, you have a few, right? I know.
Our era. But yeah, his executive officer or commanding officer of his office, Mike Quinn, God rest his soul, was another mentor of mine, who I looked up to. Wow. Jimmy Hall, I think, was a stand-up leader.
He was a good boss. Yeah.
And I told you that he's the one that went into the police commissioner and said, I had a BS allegation that, even if what they said was true, look what he's done in his career. And he got me out of the crosshairs, so to speak, and got me my first command, and I wound up getting promoted there and everything else. As far as mentors, also, Chief Brian McCarthy, he retired as a 2-star chief.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
He wound up. He started mentoring me. Actually, I got to.
Did he go to MTA? Did he go to MTA?
No. And then he actually gave me my first bit of advice. I got a spot to go and help turn a command around, and it was the first position. It wound up being so I started getting selected to go and fix places and make processes better or whatever. This was my first job. I went to command was really struggling, and I was asked to go and help out that command. And the commanding officer was just like you. The commanding officer was a deputy inspector. I was a captain, and I was basically told to go there and, help turn the place around. And he gave me some great advice. He says, don't go in there and just start making a bunch of changes. Go in there, evaluate everything for 30 days so you get a real honest look. Because when you first walk through the door, people are going to be on their P's and Q's. You want to see what's really going on before you start making any kind of changes. And that was the first bit of advice. And then he had given me advices in the future, as well as I picked up something that went very well for me as far as morale. He was the first one that he used to take 49s when he was in the chief patrol's office, and you'd send up the 49s. The 49 was like the unusual occurrence report, right? Mm-hmm. He would, on the back of the 49s, he would handwrite a note to you or to the men and women that were involved in the job. Great job, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And that got me started on writing my notes. And I got heavily involved in writing notes to officers and supervisors that did good police work, whether they worked for me or didn't work for me. If they were involved in a case that I became aware of, and I would send little tokens, pens, and then it would grow depending on the caliber, to my challenge point or whatever the case may be. But
Tony Izzo used to do that in the Bronx Borough when he was the XO or 1 star in the Bronx Borough. He would actually have he'd send a note out to me when I was the admin lieutenant. He would send a note out to me. I read this 49. Send these guys a letter, and then one of the officers we would draft a letter and thanking him or her for the service and what they did, and then we'd send it to the command. I mean, it's a big thing because you get a letter from a 1-star chief or the borough XO. It's an important thing. So
yeah.
So another question is, do you remember Camadana mowing the lawn? That was Samara Cohen said that. This is one time I'm up in ESU, and we were 3 stories, and you looked over SOD, which is only 1-story building. I see somebody weed whacking. Like, who the heck is that? Like, most of the cops would take care of it, because that was our property or whatever. Yeah. And the guy had 3 stars on his shoulder, and I'm like, what the hell? Who's he doing? It was Camadana, was weed whacking. I go,
wow.
He actually did it. He did it.
Example, right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know if he was not happy or he was bored or whatever, but he was out there. I said, you know what? He lives in Howard Beach, and maybe he doesn't have a big lawn, so he wants to.
No, there's not a lot of lawns over here.
He was fulfilling his lifelong dream.
There you go. Lily's got a question about when you're promoted to sergeant, lieutenant, etc. Did you get to choose the precinct, or did they place you guys? And did you guys ever want to be a detective? I was 2 weeks away from being a detective. I chose to take my sergeant promotion because things were different then. When you got promoted to sergeant, you got half your raise the day you got promoted, as opposed to now where it's all at the end. So, but if you're a detective prior to getting promoted, you actually go to top pay because of the pay scale differences. So I probably would have made a different choice and stayed in narcotics and got my detective shield. But I wound up being 2 weeks shy of being a detective in that. And you want to hit the second part?
Yeah. So, I mean, with the precincts, right, they give you a little dream sheet while you're going through the BMOC, which is the basic management orientation course. It's basically, I know when I went through it, was a month of listening to people just going over the same stuff you already knew, and then just basically telling you cops are going to get you in trouble, cops are going to screw you, you're going to be in trouble. But and then they give you a dream sheet. What I know, when I was a cop in the Bronx in the 4-1 precinct, so they were at that point they were sending it to a different borough. They wanted to send, so I got sent to Manhattan North. So you had to pick something in Manhattan North. They were trying to move you around and stuff. So and yeah, would I wanted to be a detective? Absolutely. When I was in anti-crime, I had applied to narcotics. I'd done my interview, and a couple weeks before they told me they were going to pick me up, I actually got promoted to sergeant. So otherwise I would have been in narcotics, and I probably would have gotten a shield in narcotics. So yeah, I would have definitely I would have liked to, definitely. I mean, they are the greatest detectives in the world. You can't take that from them. That's the best thing,
Yeah, and it's the most recognizable shield, right? That's why a lot of people think that detectives are like supervisors, because on the TV they're always telling the cops what to do in the sergeant.
that was a big thing in ESU. Like the H&T guy would be like, "Hey," and the ESU guy's like, "Dude, you're a detective. You're not telling us what to do." But yeah, I'm H&T. I'm a detective. Okay, yeah, that's great. So,
Let's,
but Joe Mango asked, when did ESU stop executing warrants? And I'm not sure they did. I thought the A team still, as far as I know, they still do. They get their warrants in the morning. ESU, the A team decides which warrants they're going to take, and then any other warrants they send over to the trucks, and then the trucks execute the warrants. So I'm pretty sure that they still do that, Joe. I'm not pervy if it has stopped. So I believe that they still have continued to do that. So that's one of the. I mean, I think the A team is still in effect. I mean, remember he was shot just recently from executing a warrant in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So
let's do a few more. We're
Okay.
running almost 2 hours and 20 minutes. Again, hit that like and subscribe button. We got about almost 650 people watching, so we appreciate people hanging in there with us. I think
and we're going to do this again, right? We're going to do this.
This is going to be a weekly. This is going to be a weekly segment. Every week we're going to do this. We can take the answers live, and again, I'll throw up the banner again. You can reach out to us at. Did I miss it?
What, finestunfiltered.com, I think it was.
Yes, I think. Did I screw up? I screwed something up.
I'll answer Lily while we're doing that real quick. ESU does do hostage jobs. That's they work closely with the hostage negotiation team, and they also work very closely with the Technical Assistance Response Unit, TARU. So it's a multifaceted job when it's a long hostage situation. Absolutely.
Yeah. Real question. As a CO, did you call the desk when off duty to see if any 7 majors came in? Be honest. That's from Delray 53. 1,000,000% not.
No?
No, absolutely not. What I did, to be perfectly honest, I was not one of you did not have to call me if there was a 7 major crime. Obviously, if there was a high profile incident, you have to call me because I'm going to get a phone call from downtown. So I need to know about it. Shootings, high profile stabbing, a homicide, any serious incident, you got to give me a call. Use your discretion, give me a call. And I'd rather you err on the side of caution. And that's how I used to put it. Err on the side of caution and call me than say, I don't want to bother the boss. And then I get a phone call and I look like a dope because I don't know what's going on. So I'd rather you call me than not call me and me tell you, all right, thanks, I appreciate it. If I need any more, I'll call you back. But every morning I would get an email out of Cognos that would list all of the 7 major felonies and all the arrests. So every morning at 6 something, it was an automatic generated out of Cognos report that would go to my phone. So I could look at my phone in the morning or whenever I woke up and got up, and if I wanted to look at it, I would look at the 7 major crimes. If not, I'd wait till I get to work and I'd look at the numbers. But I never called the desk to see if anything came in, and never required them to call. I know there are COs that you have to call for every single 7 major. It puts undue pressure on the cops, undue pressure on the frontline supervisors and the desk officer, because now they got to be shaky to have to call their boss and tell them that they got some BS burglary because some guy, got his tape measure taken out of his car that he uses to go to work.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, Lampwick asks, can police perform verticals in apartments, like private apartment buildings? And yeah, remember there was clean halls that you could sign up. Yeah. I mean, they probably don't do it anymore, but
They don't do that
I mean,
anymore.
I know they do it in the housing developments, but I mean, could you on your own, if you're on a foot post, you could do a vertical. It's not against the law, if it's public access in that building. But yeah, usually it's done for clean halls location and things like that. So
Rob says, I had several captains who were my XOs as a precinct CO. I told them we are partners in this running of this place, and I treated them as equals, all solid men in the 6'8" and the 6'6". Rob, I agree with you 100%. They are your partners. I used to tell, whenever I never said they worked for me. I always said they worked with me. I never used the verbiage, you work for me. We are partners, but there were limitations. Obviously, the XOs aren't allowed to make personnel decisions and things like that. But they always had latitude. Whatever they were in charge with, you have to know their capabilities and limitations and give them the latitude that's commensurate to that. But I agree with you 100%. It's a partnership, but your XOs are gonna come and go, and you're ultimately responsible. So, but yeah, you gotta respect the people you work with.
I like my Marlon's like, he's absolutely right. He goes, an FIO, you got to take care of the A team with donuts and coffee. You know?
Oh yeah.
You know, they're up very early. Those ladies and gentlemen.
Unique Mastiffs. Now you're throwing something at me because I used your name before. The dog's in the thing. Ron, as a CO, did you consider yourself a house mouse? Absolutely not. Anybody that worked for me, and there's somebody on the feed right now that was my midnight delegate in the 111, and he doesn't have to answer because I don't want to blow him up. But he'll tell you I would go out on patrol. I would go out on any heavy job. I hated being in the house. Did not consider myself a house mouse, and hated being strapped down when I had to prepare for things.
So I like
and
Vito's question.
saying, "Boy, the Cognos automatic report." Yep, 100%.
Vito says, "Good evening, gentlemen. It's an honor to be able to ask you guys question. My question is, how many cops were there on the job like Mike Dowd back in the day that we never heard about?" I mean, personally, I don't know of any really. I don't think that corruption where I was in the Bronx and later on in Manhattan was as widespread as it was where in the what was he in the 7-7, I think. It was I think it was more contained in that one particular precinct. I know you hear stories with Serpico and things like that prior to the Mullen Commission that it was widespread, but I don't know how much. Really, I didn't observe anything like that. I didn't know of anything, and just knew about those the ones that like just with Dowd and those particular single set cases. I know later on came up to the Dirty 30, was privy to that, where they were shaking down and kicking down. The Cowboys were kicking down doors up in Harlem. It unfortunately, the corruption occasionally grows its ugly head, and I don't want to get into the weeds, but when you start talking about the level of police officer that you hire is equal to the level of corruption, so there's always a possibility.
My collar's getting tight now, Rob. My collar's
I
getting
know.
tight.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go down that road.
No,
but it was limited. It was limited from what I observed and what I understood.
Yeah, and I also was not aware of anything else, and the people I worked with were beyond reproach. So, and that's how I was taught when I was a cop in the 7-0 back in the day. Let's take one more question. We're 2 hours and 30 minutes into it now.
All right, we take one each, unless it's the same one.
Okay.
I was gonna,
all right.
Is that one I was going to ask? So
Silverio Lorsi, and this is a follow-up. He asked the question a little earlier. I was going to get to it, but we moved on to something else. Do you guys feel that COs and XOs should be captains only? But I'll relate it to an earlier portion of his question where he asked, what do we feel about COs and XOs of units that are sergeants and lieutenants? So as far as a command, it has to be a captain or above, right? You also, you look at the rank structure, right? So if it's a sub-unit, like evidence collection or the borough order larceny unit or the borough anti-crime, which is now the public safety teams or whatever the case may be, the CO of that unit is going to be a lieutenant or a sergeant. And I don't have a problem with that, depending on the unit, the size. The size of the unit also matters, but the unit and what their function is.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think Marlon corrected me. that was a 7.5 Dowd was in. So and there's actually a good movie with that 7.5. I think I had seen it on Netflix about that whole Michael Dowd thing. But yeah, I think
just put Michael Dowd in Google. It's going to pop
yeah,
right
you'll
up.
find it. Yeah. Oh, Buddy Boys, right? Was the 7.7.
You have any more questions?
No, I was just going to answer that one real quick. I totally agree with you. I think that there has to be a certain command presence in some of those in those units. That's why captains should be in the COs or XOs spot there. But different houses deserve different levels of rank, and based upon the captain's or the deputy inspector's job and what he's done, they deserves to be promoted. So I think that you can have, back in the old days, right? It was the A and the B and the C house. A being the really bad house, B being okay, and C being a slow house. And when you were in an A house, you knew you were going to get promoted because you did a lot of work. So if you're doing more work and you deserve the promotion. And you could start out in a C house and then go to a B house and then get an A house. So that's not uncommon either. Yeah. But yeah, I agree that there should be promotions through those as a COXO. I'm also one to say that there should be promotions depending on other positions that you're in. If you're in a position of command of certain things, yes. And it should also be where a lieutenant and a sergeant can handle a squad. There are some really great bosses. The problem is some of those really great bosses that are lieutenant and squad commanders, they don't take the promotion test because they're happy where they are.
Oh yeah, they love it.
That's the sad thing. Really smart guys and gals that are great up at the podium, great presenters, great investigators, but they don't want to take the next step to be a captain, and that's the sad thing about it. But
yeah, all right. I'm gonna give Delray the last question because he's put it in there more than once now. And I think I answered this when we were talking with Rob. As a CO, did you give your XO full latitude, or were you the commander? Well, obviously, I'm the commander. I'm the boss. It's ultimately all the responsibilities are going to fall back on me as the leader of the command, right? And you give your XO specific duties. Now, again, I agree with Rob that that's your partner, and that you have to run the command together. So you have to know the limitations and capabilities. It depends. Is this an XO that's been to other commands that maybe came from the detective squad, and now they're an XO in the command because they didn't get a command? Whatever the case may be, and you find out what their capabilities are, and you assign them their duties as such. And a CO and XO can be the same rank. Yes, they can both be captains, but the CO is the boss, even though they're both captains. And the CO can do the evaluation of the XO. That's one of the rare exceptions to the rule of somebody of the same rank doing an evaluation. So, Rob,
yep.
I think this was a great.
Let me just real quick, because I'll say as an XO, I listened when I was the XO in the 2-3. I listened to he was a captain also, what he wanted, what we did. I felt that my job as the XO, whether I was in ESU as an XO, SOD as an XO, my job was to get the boss promoted, whoever I was, or my coworker, right? If he's another captain, my goal was to get that person promoted to DI, because you know what? That's how friendships are made. That's how hooks are made. Everybody talked about hooks later on, but that's how it works. When you work as a cop, you're friend with the sergeant, lieutenant, maybe the captain. As a captain, you try to be friends with the deputy inspector, the inspector, and the chief. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's just a different rank. But yeah, you had to work for that person's promotion. So you know what? Later on, you want to cash in, right? cash in, no cash.
There you go. Listen, I agree with you. Listen, I think this is a great segment. We're going to do it weekly. Again, you can email a question ahead of time, and John will funnel them to us. www.thefinestunfiltered.com, or like this, you can jump in at the end and ask us the questions. And we're going to do this segment. I think it went over well. I enjoyed it, answering off-topic questions. We went a little long today because we went long on the assessment of that video. We talked about that. We talked about the Democratic primary and Mamdani winning. So we had a little tutorial. maybe we'll do the tutorial again next week for those who weren't ready for it. It's pretty quick. But yeah, any final words before we get into the rest of the week?
Just again, this podcast is the voice for the people that can't talk. So use what Ron had suggested. If you want to keep your identity low level, that's great. We accept that. We'll answer the questions. I agree. I think the questions were good. A lot of them important questions, and we'd love to get to more. So like Ron said, just throw them to us with the finestunfiltered.com and or join us in the chat. Thanks again for everybody, all our friends and followers and listeners, and like and subscribe so that we can get more people watching this channel. And thank again John and Eric and Sal and Marlon and Jack behind the scenes. Everybody does a fantastic job here, and we don't always agree.
Right.
But opposition meets opportunity, Eric. Yep.
That's it. And listen, so yeah, I enjoyed this. We'll do this again. We'll try and time it a little bit better. Like I said, we went in deep, but again, it was an interaction with the audience during that segment also, which I enjoyed. Then people asking the questions and everything else. We don't normally do breakdowns of videos like that, so that was like our first really in-depth breakdown of a video. I enjoyed it. And so, yeah, again, so tomorrow, Sal will be back at 1:05 p.m., 13:05 Eastern Standard Time for the Sal Greco Show. I'm sure he'll be talking about more recent events and the political climate that's going on. And then on Friday, John's taking the day off. He's got some family things to take care of, and he'll be out for the roundtable. But the good Deputy Chief Rob LuKach, retired NYPD, will be sitting in for him. So you'll have Eric, Rob, and Marlon, and Sal may pop in on Friday also for the roundtable. We'll be back again next Wednesday at 5:05 p.m. for the Executive Perspective. Until then, stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.